Rotations.
All right, hey everyone, happy midweek Wednesday. Getting hyped for World Cup. I don't know if you guys are watching World Cup. Just gonna do a sound check real quick. I think this looks good. But yeah, just watching World Cup, getting excited for it. I don't know if you guys like Kern Craft. That's always a classic, and I'm rooting for Germany. I don't know about you guys, but crazy stuff going on, right? So anyway, let's go ahead and get into Bitcoin here. So last week we kind of walked through this entire range here, right? And where we left off was kind of dissecting the mini range. So we've got our large fixed range volume profile and just understanding the higher time frame perspectives here, right? So we kind of have our point of control here, our value area low, value area high, and we have kind of ultimately SFP'd the value or the ultimate low here, right? So that's kind of where we left off, is dissecting this smaller range here and then looking at low time frame trade setups in here. So Bitcoin here, we can see that when we left off last week, we were kind of basically in this zone here. And we were, obviously talking about the long setup. So from the setup here, it's been playing out perfectly. TP1 at the value area low, same with the point of control. So we were looking at coming up into the value area low, accepting as support, and then rejecting as resistance. And we've done that at least twice now. We do have some nice confluence and range build up here. So let's go ahead and kind of dive into that, right? So when we do a fixed range volume profile, we have a nice 10-day profile pull here, okay? So this, you can clearly see kind of how we've rotated through. We had a 618 backtest off of that, in which we took the long, and now we're riding that up. And then we have a nice, obviously, rejection here closer, and then which we can do another fixed range volume profile pull. So just taking the simple fixed range volume profile, for those of you that are new, it's here in your tools, fixed range volume profile. It's in your volume tools, right? So fixed range volume profile, you're just looking and assessing the volume profile that has occurred in this overall area, looking at the volume. So your point of control right here, value area low, and then your value area high, right? So we've obviously had some progression here, right? So we have a few MPOCs on the table, and here I've deleted them, but you can kind of see here, this is the point of control, this larger range. You can see this is a very big support or resistance level, right? And now what we've done here locally, you can see in the intraday, if we take our opens on, right? So now we've basically flipped the weekly open as support here in the meantime, and we're fighting for a rotational play back up to the value area high. So really what we did is we accepted back into the larger value area 9-week low, came up, rejected, SFP'd, right? Rejected point of control, came down, formed more value in this orange fixed range volume pull, right? So you have a rotational play in here. We flipped the rotation to the point of control here. We flipped that as a resistance level. We kind of came down, took liquidity, filled out some of this inconsistency, and now we're fighting to reclaim that level back up, right? So in the lower time frame, market structure is still trending, medium time frame, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, right? So we're looking for at least another punch back up to the MPOC if we can continue to hold the weekly open and daily open, right? Those are huge levels to look at for just intraday perspective, right? And just knowing where we're at in times of trading in confluence like this, and then stacking on levels, right? So there's two really big short trades, or trades to look at in general. One is a short trade, right? So if we can continue to make a climb back up above the weekly open, rotate, reclaim the value area high of this local range, flip the POC of the larger range into support, right? We can make a gun up to the 67, 68K level, in which there's an MPOC. And really the significance of this is basically looking at these highs here, okay? So looking at these highs here, if we can kind of come up and SFP into these highs, that would look for a good short setup, okay? So looking at that, there's a lot of liquidity on the table. So if we flip to, let's see here if I can pull this up for you guys. If we flip to, what do we have? Actually, I don't have the liquidity pulled up, but I do actually want to dissect order flow right here. So if you have just kind of a toss, I use a toss. This is my workspace, right? And this is the same chart. This is the hourly on Bitcoin. So you can kind of see how we've rejected from that point of control up here, flipped it to resistance. You had a lot of positive delta piling into that point of control. So point of control is basically right here at these highs, right? So you can really see on the delta side of things, you have longs piling into the point of control resistance. So when you see a lot of longs piling into resistance, you do want to be cautious of something like that. And obviously we did see a move down, right? Because we had 19 million volume, negative delta, or 19 negative delta, 39 million volume on that single candle alone, 19 negative delta on that candle. So you can see that sellers were still in control, trap these longs, and then push it down for a short squeeze down here. That wasn't really long lived here, right? Because we can see that we did have more negative delta show up at these lows, filling into that inconsistency. But you can kind of see right here, right? We have more positive delta pulling back up. We've now reclaimed the daily VWAP, and then now we're back above the weekly and monthly POC. So if we can continue this positive delta flush back up into it, trap some shorts down here that we have, you can see it, just in these candles, you had shorts trying to really sink the price back down. They didn't do a good job of that. So you had positive delta show up, push price up into it, maybe a little bit of a short squeeze for that. And then, obviously going back to the rotational values of what we just looked at, okay? So, and we're just looking at the, let's go back to trading view. Where's my trading view? Weekly open, daily open, so same thing, right? So if we can continue this move back up into this and look at this NPOC here, this is something that I would be looking for from a short perspective, right? So in a reactionary environment, when you're looking at this level here, you want to see, one thing, okay? You want to see a swing failure pattern. You want to see a move up into this level. You want to see these highs taken out. And you do want to be very cautious of this level though, right? Because this is in the context of the larger value area high up here. And then your point of control of your 9-week value, okay? So just as we kind of came down very quickly through this level, we can also come up very quickly through this level. So this is going to be one of those trades that if we do get a move up, and you're not in a short right now, if we do get the move up, you're going to want to look for this level. If not, for me personally, I'm not going to touch anything until we traverse back up to 77K if that level's lost. So in terms of this level, you really want to see a reactionary based trade, take out these highs, maybe fill out some of this inconsistency, come down and kind of dance a little bit, ultimately show weakness and lose level, and then take a trade based on a lower high, lower time frame, and place your stops very, in my opinion, tight on the lower high level of that, right? Because if we kind of do one of these, right, and we kind of do have rejection, but then we actually come up into it, then you're going to have a quick move back through rotation of value. So that's kind of the reactionary based environment that I'm talking about, being patient with execution and the trigger entry for that, okay? So these highs are of significance important to me, but let's say that we do not actually come down into this level, okay? The one thing that I'm going to be looking at for longs, where am I going to be looking at for longs, okay? We've talked about the 10-day value that we've built up here. If we continue to just, this is ultimately just a lower high, right? Because we have our high here, lower high. We can see the lower highs that we're putting in. We still actually haven't taken out these highs here. So ultimately we could just have a big swing fill pattern of the weekly open and daily open right now and this POC, and then ultimately come back down and still kind of continue our lower high pattern down into this, right? And just kind of come into value like this, right? In that case, where am I looking for longs? Well, it's the same thing. So we have our 10-day value built up. I've identified this is where I pull my negative point of controls. We have the monthly point of control, the 10-day point of control right here. If I take just kind of a simple 618 Fibonacci pull, 618, 66 are my favorite fibs, and we do from this low to this high, We can see that it lines up perfectly with the monthly point of control and the 10-day point of control. So really, if we're looking for longs on a thesis like this, we can say that if price comes down into this is a good level of support to be looking for longs. Now, I can't really just say, I'm going to invalidate my long at this level. For me, it's another reactionary based trade, because if we kind of continue to do something like this and we come down into support, right, I really want to see a basing structure, and I want to see something like this kind of form and then come up like that. And then that way I kind of at least enter on a higher low on a lower time frame perspective, and then place an invalidation below this low, or just give myself some room, right? Maybe below the 7.2 or below this little wick right here. And then that way you have a bit of a better R structured, and then you can target higher or even just a bounce back to the weekly open or something like that. And you still have a, a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 setup. So at the end of the day here, you have good confluence here. You can even take, if I just kind of build out this confluence with you guys, if you take the fib speed resistance fam and you just take it from the low to the highs, you even have the 618 and the 66 on the speed fan lining up with the 66 of the fib retracement level, okay? So there's a lot of confluence in this zone right here to be looking for along, right? There's a lot of, you have your daily naked point of control. I don't even have my levels on, so if we have a weekly level, right? So this is previous week open. So you have a weekly level, a monthly naked point of control, the 618 of the fib span, and then also the fib retracement, daily naked point of control, 10-day point of control. So that is a level of, good support. You can even stack on another volume-based tool, the anchored, the AVWAP, right? So you have an anchored VWAP right here, and that is obviously coming up right into this, so that's another level. So again, I would classify this as a plus confluence zone, okay? So if price does come into that, obviously that would be a good level to look at. We can obviously see right now on lower time frames that we're kind of pushing pretty bullish right here, okay? So there is a lot of liquidity built up into this level here. So this naked point of control is going to be a huge interest to me from a short perspective if we can kind of get back up into there, okay? Again, that's built into market structure. Higher high, higher low, higher high, clearly higher low. If we continue to clear these, higher high, right? And then we can look to fade that if we take out these highs, take out that liquidity, have kind of a failure of this, and then come back down. That's kind of how I'm looking at Bitcoin right now in lower time frames with higher time frame confluence there, okay? I'm just going to look at comments here. How do you mark NPOC? It's daily naked. Yeah, so let's go. I'll show you a TOS setup that I have, and I kind of just flashed that here. But if we look at a TOS, let me look here. This is, pull this out for you guys. Where is my TOS? Okay, so this is a TOS. This is what I trade footprint on. This is my workspace, okay? So I have my order flow here. But here is where I have this on the BTC USD Bybit pair. So just like I kind of showed you fixed range volume profiles, this is my daily fixed range volume profile. So this captures the daily sessions. This captures the weekly, and this captures the monthly. So for me, when I load into, the trading mindset every morning before New York Open, I'm looking at this station, and I'm looking at from a higher time frame down, where are we at in terms of the monthly value area, where are we at in the weekly value area, and where are we at in terms of the current day. Where is the previous day point of control? Where is the previous day value area low, the previous day value area high, and so on, right? So I like to build that in terms of where are we at in the monthly value area, where's and then I have this in my my footprint, okay? So I can kind of see where's the weekly and the monthly are kind of buried into each other on this this footprint here. Actually, the monthly POC is down here. But how do I mark out daily point of controls? Well, I come into here and you can see right here. So this was Saturday, last Saturday. This is our Saturday daily value area. And you can clearly see that from this is the point of control here, that we traverse up through value. And when we opened up that day, this is our new daily of Sunday. We never came back down and touched the point of control. So you have a point of control that's basically untapped. So when I go to my trading view, I essentially just go and I mark that point of control from my footprint. I like to do that from a TOS here because you can clearly see where the action is happening on the footprint, right? So when you zoom in, you can clearly see, we have a good amount of longs opening up right here and pushing delta up higher. Delta is increasing. Longs are positive deltas flooding in, and we're seeing a good bid response from buyers here. So we're back in the value area, like I said, and reclaimed weekly point of control, weekly open, daily open. So you get a way better footprint on a toss, or if you use MMT, and you can kind of get a better accurate point of control perspective, right? And I do the same for my weeklies and my monthly point of control. So I hope that answers your question. MNQ, monthly naked point of control, how to mark volume profile. If you're curious about how to mark a volume profile, Tyson does a really good job of looking at something like that on our free content. I can post that in the link here. We have a couple of videos on how to use the fixed range volume profile too. And it's honestly, it's very simple. It's one of the most effective tools to be looking at. And there's really no crazy science behind it. You find that here again in your volume-based tools, fixed range volume profile and anchored VWAP. Those are my two most used ones, right? So if you have any sort of built-up value, you're simply just going to assess the fixed range volume profile. You're going to want to look at where was the overall volume in here. So if we simply just look at this fixed range volume profile here, for example, value area high, point of control, value area low. Price came in here, started forming value, right? And you can see the respective levels of the value area high, especially right here. Value area high, didn't accept above it, rejected, it traversed through value, and then looked for new value. So it's pretty simple like that, especially around the monthly open. That's one to be looking for. And that's the same for weekly open, right? So when we kind of go and we just go look at where we're at right now, you can clearly see, again, in the larger context of this, where the value's at. So just looking at the 1 hour, okay, we've reclaimed the value area low of this 9-week entire value that I showed you at the beginning of this. We then came up through the value area low of this mini range. We reclaimed the weekly open. And if we zoom in even on the 5-minute, I mean, you can clearly see the respect of levels that we have for something like this, right? So again, this is our mini range in the orange. You can really see that, flipped it to resistance, flipped it to support, resistance on POC, flipped the daily open as support, right? I mean, you can really get in here and see this and how technical Bitcoin is as an asset, right? That's a point of control right there. I mean, that's a rejection to the dollar. And then you have a back test to the daily open as support, came up to resistance again on point of control, but retested weekly open, flipped it, and now we're trending higher, right? So we have taken out these lows in the time that we've done that. I mean, look at that. That's a pretty significant move up, right? And that's just one of those things where, again, if we're still, you have to look at time frame here. So this is on the 5-minute. This is our high, lower high, lower high. Now we've kind of flipped this to support. So really, this is the confluence here to be looking at from someone who marks daily opens, weekly opens, point of controls. You want to see this held as support for another move up into this, okay? Otherwise, you lose this level here. And you lose, I mean, it's pretty significant of how that starts to flip into resistance, how to look at probabilities. So you have your support down here, and then you don't really have a whole lot of crazy resistance up here, right? You flip this major 9-week value point of control into support. I mean, you might see a pretty big move up into, again, flipping up into back to the monthly open. So that's just kind of something to be looking at. Just looking at comments again here. Any reason you don't use XO? I used XO charts before, and then I switched to a toss because XO was just bugging out. I don't know. Maybe they fixed that. Maybe it's a lot better. I don't have anything wrong with XO. Just from a technical perspective, I wanted to use a toss, and I like a toss. I don't think you posted in Discord, by the way. I'm not sure what that means. I don't trade prop firms. I'm self-funded. I believe in building wealth through self-funded versus prop firms. I think prop firms, I've never touched a prop firm, to be honest with you. And I've traded since 2017. So, I use capital from the 2017 run, the 2020 run. And, I trade futures on MEXC, Blowfin. And, for me, it's worked. I don't have to worry about passing an evaluation phase to get capital. I've already preserved that capital. And I totally recommend everybody doing that. Even if you are using a prop firm to obviously increase your capital, start to make that switch over time and stop relying on prop firms. Let's see, what else do we have? Do you have any advice on how I can have a hierarchy for what's more important for my trigger or confluence, VWAP, volume, balance? They all kind of fit into each other, right? So if you're looking for execution factors, I mean, obviously you want to look at the footprint, because that's your number one execution. That tells you exactly where to kind of pull the trigger. But you want to build that like AMT auction market, theory strategy into it, looking at the overall rotations of value. Where is the market going to auction itself? And then, having directional bias and something like that. Can I use VWAP as my confirmation, my strategy? Yeah, I see a lot of people literally only using VWAP and it works. I think VWAP's a super powerful tool. I think if we kind of zoom out to try to find a good example. I mean, really, this was a good example down here. When you place a anchored volume profile at a high volume place or a significant low, this was in the right context, right? We've had this nice little VWAP here, value area low, VWAP. You could have honestly looked for, and this was at Sunday CME Open. So, having some sort of VWAP strategy, I don't see why not, whatever works for you. I think it's smart though, when you look at confluence like this, like in a perfect world too, right? Like if BTC was trending down right now into something like this, that'd be really sexy and attractive, right? Because you have the VWAP right there, anchored VWAP at a big swing low, 618 on both sides of the coin, weekly, monthly negative point of control. I mean, that's stacked confluence. So I think, yeah, you can use VWAP alone. I personally wouldn't really recommend it because for me, I really just want to see stacked confluence. So when you have something like this, you're guaranteed to have a reaction here. I mean, you're not really you're not 100% guaranteed on anything, right? But I would really have a high probability of, if price came into this, you'd have at least a reaction bounce, right? And something like that, and then you can trade off something like that versus, if you just only had a VWAP here and you're looking at the VWAP, well, it could just cut through it, right? Versus saying, oh, we have a bunch of support, monthly point of control, something like that. So yeah. So Bitcoin, I mean, that's really what I'm looking for. Shorts up here, longs down here. Let's go ahead and get into NQ, because NQ is another good one to be looking at, right? So NQ, we kind of have this larger fixed range profile pole. This is the same thing that I'm working through. Fixed range volume profile. Looking at this, we've had a very nice traversal through value. Last week we kind of talked about the technicals of previous day high, swept, came down, and then ran the same playbook of previous day high, swept, and then again nuked down, right? So NQ loves to run that pattern. Always look at the previous day high. If there's a sweep for that and then there's bearish order flow, you can definitely look at something like that, right? For me personally, we have this gap right here, right? So this was last Friday. We had the Sunday, the Sunday open, and then we've kind of had this bullish move up, took out the all-time highs, and then Monday, yesterday, was kind of looking at this like, hey, we have this very mini range profile. If we lose this value when we zoom in, right? Let's go into the 5-minute here. If we lose this value, and this was the daily open of yesterday, okay? This is not the current daily open. This is yesterday's daily open. So when we have something like this, right? New York opens basically right here, okay? Reverse into the daily open, reject, come down, come back into value, rotate back to the value area high, reject, and then we start losing levels. That's what I'm looking for, is a breakdown of this value to find new value. And the current value below this value is a 6-day value, okay? So when we look at the hourly and we just do a fixed range volume profile of what was here, right, last week, you can kind of see you had some nice value built up in this zone. So you want to measure, where's the value? Okay, that's a 6-day range. You can see that once we rejected from this value and lost this value, we traverse all the way back through this value. So really that's just kind of how auction market theory works, is looking for the next auction, looking for the next value. You can really see on lower time frames too the respective levels that this stuff has, okay? So you're losing this value here, coming down, flipping value area high to resistance, point of control flips to resistance, and then what's the highest probability? You look for the next the value, which is the 6-day value area low, or the monthly open, because you can see we bounced from the monthly open, then we took out the value area low, okay? But for me personally, it's really simple on NQ. You're looking at two things. One, where's the longs? Well, you have this nice gap from Friday to Saturday, okay? So you want to be looking at a gap fill. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but you have to be aware of that. So you have a gap fill, you have the 618 from this low to this high, and you have your anchored VWAP, just like we pulled on Bitcoin, coming up into support right around this daily. So if we have some sort of move like this where we lose this value, just like we did up here, lose this value, come down, traverse, look for new value, which is down here. And even if we traverse back down there, this VWAP is going to kind of come up nicely. So at that point, I don't think I would look for a traverse to value. I'd look up for this VWAP coming into the 72618, maybe a, and again, this is the value area high of this range for something like this, right? And then you look for a long play, again, for a move back up to the highs and putting your stops below that assumed low, okay? And in the meantime, if we're not going to go immediately down there and fill that gap, well, we can always go and say, well, where's the high at? Well, we have our high. We've taken a short, okay? So here's the high. Let's place a anchored VWAP at the high, okay? I like to look at 618 back tests, look at the Fibonacci retracements. Again, where does that line up? That lines up with the 6-day value of this entire range. So if we get, again, we've traversed through this value. We've reclaimed it as support. We're fighting for a move back up. You can see again here too. This is the anchored VWAP. Look at how the respect of this retracement is to this, right? Rejection, rejection. So don't fade an anchored VWAP at the right placement, okay? I love my anchored VWAPs at swing highs and swing lows, and that's primarily how I use VWAPs. I think it's a very powerful tool. Again, though, for a short perspective, right? We've had this major kind of inconsistency, this punch down. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a move back up before we kind of come down into this. So you have 61866 6-day value area high. However, again, higher time frame to lower time frame confluence, right? What are we doing on a higher time frame perspective, right? Is this bullish or bearish? Well, technically it's bullish, right? Because you have higher highs, higher lows, right? And even on the context of all this, I mean, there's no weakness in the market. So when you have a major range coming back up into this, you still want to be cautiously, if you're going to look for a short here, you still want to be pretty cautious. And for me, this was a 1% setup. I'm not putting a lot of capital onto this because if this didn't work out and it came back up, I don't want to be in a 5% loss, right? If I don't want to be throwing up 5% on a short that is going to hurt me, right? So at the same time here, I'm going to be looking for the same thing, right? I'm going to be maybe looking for the assumed rejection, and then again, breakdown of value, enter on the lower high, lower time frames, and place a stop loss that has a better, risk to reward and giving it some room to breathe, right? So really at the end of the day for NQ, I'm still bullish for NQ, but at the same time, be wary of this gap and how we can still come down. But, what's stopping NQ from, again, kind of coming back up and taking out the highs again, right? So NQ, that's kind of how to look at certain things, how I look at things using anchored VWAP, fixed range volume profile, and stuff like that, okay? I'm going to come back to the comments here. You guys got a lot of good questions today. Can you share your TOS and TradingView template? I do this in premium, so premium members get, Tyson does the same thing, so... that's a huge value of, even if you're a monthly member, you get access to all the templates, all of the, tools that we use, the workshops. Why my value area high and value area low and POC not be good support and resistance? You're just probably not pulling a good profile, right? Some people, and we have a video of this where like if you're looking at something like this and you just pull a profile, like you're not going to have a good profile because there's not like value built up, and this is more of a trending structure versus like you want to have more of a value built up in terms of like sideways correctional, like this is a better value build up, right, than it is down from just saying like I'm going to pull the entire range of this and now it hit my value area low, I'm going to short. Well, that's not going to be a good short setup. So that's why your value area highs and lows and POCs aren't pulling, because you're not giving yourself a better structural confluence. Like so for NVIDIA, let's go look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA's got some good stuff going on. So let's just go look at the 4-hour, right? I mean, this is a 160-day. Actually, I think this is longer than that. Like this is 266 days. So for NVIDIA, really it's one of those things where you want to pull the entire fixed range volume profile here. You can see the respect of the value area high and how we react off the point of control. And then once we kind of came down and took out these highs, right? You look for the value area low, retest, and then boom, right? And that's when you take the long, okay? So when you look at the long here, I'm still in this long, right? You look for the lows, you look for it to come back into value. I took an aggressive long here, but you really, you can play it like this, right? And then you have a really good entry and a really good invalidation. So if your value area lows, value area highs, your point of controls aren't really respecting, it's because you don't have a good fixed range volume profile there. Before it was just volume VWAP and footprint. Could you also do some analysis on MNQ, especially with footprint? I made 3K first week in the Discord, and then I'm down 600 this week just because I've got too many indicators on my screen now. I don't use any indicators, man. So like I have favorites like marked out here, but to be honest with you, like I haven't touched any of these. To be honest with you, like to be honest, like I really don't use like the only one I use is volume. These are all indicators that I've saved when I first started trading like years and years and years ago, right? I don't really use these though because like I said, everything I've kind of talked about is the same thing today, right? You really have your fixed range volume profiles. Your volume tools are really just like such a huge beneficial factor. So coming back to Bitcoin here, you can really clearly see how easy it would be to, again, let's just do this, right? Let's get rid of what we've built up here, get rid of these noise. Just looking at, so the long, for example, that I was talking about last week, right? This is your value area low, value area high. And, you can just use two tools, right? You can use the fixed range volume profile and a 61866, and that's all you'll ever really need, It's the same thing on any other pair. So, if you're using too many indicators and your screen starts to look like, like this, and you have too much shit going on, just keep it very simple. Just look at the value that's built up. I think that'll be a huge change for you. Anchored VWAP versus daily VWAP, standard deviation 1 and 2. Anchored VWAP and daily VWAP, I think that's really good. Like for me, I use all those as well, and I include those in my footprint. But like if we look at the weekly VWAP right now, and we just kind of look at the weekly open, right? Same principle as the daily. And where are we at right now? We're at the weekly VWAP, okay? So you just place a anchored VWAP, which is just the weekly VWAP, right, at the weekly open. And you can kind of see how we've respected and rejected, right? So yesterday we kind of retested that twice, rejected, and you could have taken a trade off the weekly VWAP if that's your fancy, right? And I don't know if yesterday, no, it wasn't. You kind of find some better confluence in something like this, right? So if we flip this weekly VWAP into support, I don't see why this would be another good base structure to have for a move back up into value, right? Same thing with monthly, right? So you have your monthly profile. I like mine in purple, so I just keep mine in purple. But it's the same thing, right? We kind of front ran the monthly value area, but yesterday I think it was kind of looking at something like this, right? So it shifts, right, as it builds out value because it's developing. But if you see this is the monthly value area high, you can see exactly where Bitcoin just absolutely just bounced that support. So keeping an eye on weekly, monthly, daily, especially with the VWAPs, it's really great. Had this VWAP been here, that would have been a great support as well. So I hope that answers your question too. So you're just using volume profile and sideway only to get good value area high. Also, can we use old sideways? Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of using like larger contextual, like older value ranges, especially large ones too, right? So, and even in the context of what we just did here, right? So, flip that POC into resistance. What did we do here today? Well, we just reclaimed the value area low of this entire range, right? So this is kind of historical in a sense. So you can clearly see that was just a big SFP on a bigger time frame, right? But if we kind of go back into and we look at something like this entire fixed range profile, and you're pulling like all of the volume in here, right? I believe I have this one marked out. Let me go back to my beat because I actually have a lot more built up on here. So if I look at that same profile, right? So this is like March to September of 2024, right? You're taking the volume profile of this entire range and you use that as historical value. I believe that's 2024, right? So if you look at this, where did we bounce from the 60K low, and where did we bounce from the 59K low? Right there at that old value area low. So it's really, you know, again, it's how you use it in context. It's how you use it with confluence and narrative, especially built in with Elliott wave, right? So, you know, when you kind of come back into Elliott wave theory, which I'm a huge fan of, you know, I was looking for a fifth wave structure here. Personally, I didn't get the long on it, but if you're just, you know, again, you're looking at this value area low, and you're just, you know, again, let's just say this is value area low. Where do we bounce? Value area low. You take the long out the fifth wave and you look for a move higher, right? So yeah, you can most certainly, you know, do something like that. My volume profile settings, man, it's very simple. I just have 1,000 row size. That's it. And then I just take off, you know, developing. It's very simple. Nothing crazy going on, right? And for me, it's less about like what's going on here. Like you know, a lot of people have their value areas. Like, you know, like for me, it's just more about like the value area high, POC value area low. A lot of people use volume nodes, and that's good to look at high volume nodes, right? You can kind of see as well, like we have a high volume node right here. So if you look at these kind of ticks here, you can kind of see like where we kind of have developed resistance to, or flips back to support, right? Here you have low volume nodes, so we kind of traverse, you know, quickly through those. So yeah, it's good to be keep in mind of those, but nothing crazy there, guys, you know. So I covered Bitcoin, kind of covered like lower time frame, what we're looking at, how to be looking to trade these, right? You know, for me personally, it's playing the market structure, playing the context. The setups that I have, again, one, you know, staying in this long, looking for higher if we get higher. Two, you know, took in the short yesterday, right? So still in this short at the moment. I personally haven't flipped this to break even though I was up, because it's a hedge, right? So if I have my long play in, you know, and I'm up on this, I want to take a hedge here, and I don't want to just like be taken out of this just for it to run down lower, right? Because, you know, in context of this, we have a lower high. I wouldn't really count these as lower highs, right? So this is kind of the high to be considered of, right? So I would keep my invalidation there, right? And again, it's like understanding the narrative, right? You have your weekly VWAP, you have your opens. So obviously if we flip these into support and come up, then I would probably consider looking at active risk management and saying like, maybe we will come flip this into support and then make a larger run up. In that case, I'll be monitoring my entry and just kind of keeping like a stop loss, right? And just kind of looking at footprint again and just seeing like, are buyers more aggressive here, or are they getting absorbed by sellers? In that case, just stay in the short trade. And again, you know, kind of then look for the lower confluence, which is, you know, one, staying in the long here, staying in the short, and then looking for another play on the compound of the 61866 long setup to target higher, right? So, yeah. I think what else we want to cover here? Let's see. Covered NQ. We can look at some. Yeah. Let's take 10 minutes and we'll close this stream up. So, hype. I always want to cover hype because we covered hype last time too, because everyone's all about the hype, you know. So, hype. Last week we were talking about a head and shoulders on hype, right? Left shoulder, head, right shoulder. And then we would have looked for a continuation down, right? And ultimately that didn't play out. There's a few factors, right? So if we take the anchored VWAP from a significant low, right, high volume, where we kind of had a higher low base, created value area, and then moved up, you can see exactly where we did bounce, which again, I'm taking a larger fixed range profile pull of everything in here, including the deviation up here, right? So you have a move out of value into that VWAP, reclaim into support, value area low, and then you have a VWAP here that's obviously acting as support as well, right? So we've taken the all-time high of hype. We have our monthly open, our weekly open. Where would I be looking for a long if I can get it? Well, personally, if Bitcoin wants to take a nap and comes back down to 63K, I think this would bring hype a little bit lower, right? And if that's the case, where to be looking at, this would be a very perfect level for hype long, right? You don't accept into this value. You look for something for a retest of this value, anchored VWAP, and you look for something like this, okay? You can then pull like a 618 fib from a significant low, and you look for, again, fib support, and then naked point of controls, weeklies, dailies, monthlies. You have your weekly open, so maybe you get a bigger, weekly open into the 61866, and then you look for something like this, right? And then you place your stop loss at the low, giving yourself a good invalidation, and you target at least the highs or higher, right? So hype, pretty simple on that as well. So all we're doing, again, guys, is using fixed range volume profile, anchored VWAP, and you're getting really good structural trades on it, using order flow for something like this, and just giving yourself a better edge from footprint read, CVD, divergences, where you at in the auction, and then Elliott Wave if you guys are Elliott Wave proponents. It's kind of the same thing for NVIDIA, right? Like I'm tracking NVIDIA with Elliott Wave. It's worked out very nicely. NVIDIA is one of those coins, right? So if this is a wave 1, we made an ABC structural 2. We long the bottom of 2. We're looking for a third wave move higher, right, to sell into. And we're looking for that higher low placement. So, yep, we've taken out the highs. If we come down for a higher low into this, we look for the long setup at weekly, daily. Where are we at? The value area high, if we could. That would be my line in the sand. You can see here we've kind of rejected from local value. So when we zoom into something like this, right, this is a fixed range volume profile of value in this range. So what did we do? We kind of came out, traversed through value, tapped the anchored VWAP from where? Our significant low. And you can see that right now it's basing as support. But right now, we didn't actually flip that value area high or low into support. So we're kind of just trading in this sideways zone, looking for the next value, the next auction, right? I mean, you could definitely pull something like this. You could trade smaller profiles. You could see that we bounced at the point of control right there. We had the weekly tap and so on and so on. So for NVIDIA, again, I'd be looking at 200 zone, 190, looking for a bigger, larger rotational play for a move back higher. Same with the mirror prize. We long mirror prize last week. And I give confirmations in my Discord. I've kind of shown that. Again, I can kind of pull that up for you guys as well if you guys are curious on premium. Same with Tesla, like we long Tesla last week. Didn't do anything with SpaceX. SpaceX is one of those where it's like, man, like anything with an IPO, it's just really one of those things, right? So here is, in context of a mirror price, right? So actually I got my oil trade in there too, right? But at the same time, looking at this, I'll just zoom in on here for you guys. I mean, this is the confirmation. You can clearly see the trend that we're in, right? We're in a compressing structure, A, B, C, D, E, confluence triangle. You have your monthly open, your weekly open, and then you have your 618 back test again. I'm not using volume weighted average profile, the VWAP on this. So really it's just more of confirmation on, reclaim structure. This is a very large volume profile pull, right? So we reclaimed, when we zoom in, we reclaimed the value area low. And then last week we had a weekly open. Let's go find last week's weekly open, in which that was the kind of the trigger. So this is last week's weekly open. Let's put the magnet on so we can get precise here. Last week's weekly open. And then, we just had a break above, take a entry on the break above, and then now we're up and took profit at the monthly, right? So this auction market theory, value area, volume profile, it applies to everything, including stocks, right? And here's me in my Discord channel just saying, I'm scaling into the amp long at weekly here. And then today, in the Discord, celebrating some nice profits that we've taken the value area or the monthly profile, and we're looking for the larger play, right? So nice if we can flip this monthly profile, monthly level into support, and at least make a run up to the POC or even higher to the value area low. So it's the same or value area high. So it's the same concepts that we're kind of always teaching here, right? Yeah, Tesla is one of those things too. Like we had a successful SpaceX IPO. So longing last week during the IPO on Thursday, Friday. It's kind of one of those things. It's kind of, in tandem with each other, just like how Bitcoin runs up with alts. So kind of capturing, what is that, like 8% on this at its highs. So, I really would love to see again, Tesla, same thing. Value areas, VWAP support, which we did. Look at that. Look at that. I mean, that's just really nice. Look at this. This is the VWAP from our lows, okay? We've kind of flipped that into support, and then now we're trying to make a run back up. This is the value area high. So it's nothing crazy there. I mean, even if we kind of pull from this low here, you can see the respect that a VWAP has paired with the point of control on this larger profile pull. It's just really something that's super simple, but super effective. And that's just kind of what I'm trying to drill down for you guys today. So yeah, I covered Bitcoin and Q. Oh, one more thing I want to cover for silver for you guys, because I thought this was pretty fascinating, right? For those of you that trade commodities like silver, so let me kind of just structure this for you guys, and I'll just redo this confluence here. So, and then I'll end off on silver, right? Because this is kind of something that reminds me when I was trading Bitcoin back in 2017. Excuse me, just like a really good opportunity to be had, right? Just making sure I have all this pulled up for you guys. Okay, so you can see here just from a simple fixed range volume profile. Again, we're just assessing the fixed range, the profile pull of everything that's happening in here, okay? So here's your value area low, point of control, value area high. Got a daily, a weekly. I'm keeping my VWAP up here just to kind of see how we react to this VWAP. So far, it's been a pretty nice respected VWAP, okay? In terms of our lows, right? Our lows, like this low did not take this low out, right? This low did not take this low. However, this low did take this low, but it's kind of in context of larger things. It is primarily, I'm just going to toggle these so I don't redraw them. Kind of like this bottom of a overall supply level, right? And then from our highs, we have obviously our our big swing high, but then we have a lower high here. And then we have another lower high here. So these highs are not being taken out. So they're kind of protected in some ways, right? So when we kind of think about like where is confluence on lower high structure, you have trending lower highs. And then you have a flat bottom, right? So it's a flat bottom triangle descending, right? So you kind of have this compression of liquidity, right? So you have liquidity building up on both sides below this level. And then you have liquidity building up above these highs, right? But you can assume that these highs are protected, right? So the logical next move for something like this is to kind of look for a bounce and a rotational play back up, right? And you kind of start to build out that overall confluence again. So building out the 61866, right? From lows or highs to lows. And then, you have a daily, your value area high and weekly. Okay. So what I would expect for something like this is if we can get a move, right? Back up from these lows, traverse back up into here, reject, you look for a short trade, right? For something like this, back down to the liquidity below this. And why I'm showing you guys this is because back in 2017, right? So when we go to 2017 Bitcoin, you're seeing this same exact thing on Bitcoin in 2017, right? And I remember trading this, and when I saw this on silver, I was like, man, actually, I'll just stick to the daily because trading view is being really weird. This is the daily time frame versus when on silver, I was showing you on the 4-hour. But again, this is a very simple thing, right? You have your fixed range volume profile. So you can see where your value area high is, point of control, value area low. Your lows here, right? Your lows here are kind of in tandem in this supply zone. They're not really doing much, right? So you can kind of see here, just like we had on silver, you had our initial low. This middle low took out that low. And then we failed to create that low, and then we had a bounce back up, right? And ultimately, if you had a bounce back up, depending on what high to low that you pull this from, 618 pull, right? So this is kind of what we're looking at on silver. You're looking for that move back up on silver into the 618 on another lower high basis, back to the value area high. You can try and see where the VWAP lands. So if you had a VWAP from your overall high, you can see the VWAP. and then you look for the short setup at, depending on how you structure it and what your invalidation is, right? So again, it's really the same thing. You're looking for that compression, right? And it's really just a market maker kind of move, right? Compression, move down, and then what did we do? We ultimately flushed back up for that 2020 run, right? So same thing on silver, really just the same kind of move. So for those of you who trade commodities, sneaking that one in for you. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you guys off on that. You guys got my thoughts on all that. I hope you guys have a good rest of your week and weekend, and hope you guys are enjoying World Cup. Always